right, hey folks, let's get a timer going here so I'm on the clock. We got a 20-minute block going, and now we'll see if we are actually live and up and running. We're going to do some adventure design work this morning using dice, Oracle dice. Adventure design work this morning using dice. Volume sounds okay, so let's pull that back a bit. We'll bring in our microphone off screen a little bit closer. I'm going to grab the link to this because we're going to post on the social medias that we're live real quick, and I'll go through my origin story here with you guys real fast, and we'll get into what we're doing. So hey, my name is Phil Kearney. I create role-playing games, I illustrate them, I publish them online, and I've been playing D&D or running games since 1987. I've been creating content for 5th edition on the DMsGuild since 2017. And that got started because of the Guildmaster's Guide to Ravnica. When that was published, a lot of us MTG enthusiasts, Magic the Gathering enthusiasts, were kind of hoping that there was going to be some discussion, a formal discussion about the about color magic and mana being incorporated into 5e. But when it became evident that the philosophy behind 5e would be to take Magic the Gathering and make it spell slots with the 8 schools and just use the theme and setting of Ravnica worlds in a D&D frame. It makes sense, but it's not what we were hoping for. 3rd edition was rampant with like all sorts of different mechanical systems and prestige classes and power systems and resources that were different from the normal 8 schools of magic and casting. So when 5th edition was still fairly new, 2017, making new settings, we thought there might be new expressions of mechanics like there was in 3rd edition. Well, that just creates a lot of separation. And if you have like one power system here and a different power system here and different races and classes here, there's a lot of diversity that TSR learned in 2nd edition divides the audience. So Wizards is trying to play it smart and unifying the audience by making all the mechanics curve back into the player's handbook, which I respect, but you lose a lot of game flavor when the mechanics always work the same, but you change the narrative. Like, how many different ways can you give somebody advantage in 5th edition? Because each one of those ways is technically just flavor text on top of a mechanic. The mechanic is get advantage on your next D20 die roll. Everything else is just jazz. So having more tools in your toolkit allows you to express your game in a more varied system. Hey, Ralph. So that's what got me into building content for 5th edition. The desire to have a functioning color mana system to be able to run Magic the Gathering campaigns using a 5-color mana system, which is all here on the DMsGuild for folks to check out if they're interested. Then let me go ahead and fix my screen here. So I'm on the X Twitter platform at Phil Kearney. If anybody wants to tag along, and I do discount coupons and notifications when I'm live, and of course like, subscribe, bell icon to get notifications when I'm live. Hey, thanks a lot, new subscribers, appreciate y'all. Here's the full playlist of all of the here it is, the full playlist of all the design work we've been doing for Magic the Gathering power system. We have the Martial Powers system here. We're looking at right now the adventure design stuff. So we're going to focus on Oracle system design right now. This is what we were doing during lunchtime yesterday. So we're going to continue that endeavor. In the course of about 40 some odd minutes yesterday, we were able to figure out the themes and conflicts that existed at the ground level. Let me get all these book covers out of the way. And so this is this is the tile that we're looking at. Here's all the different ways you can configure 5-room dungeon connections. Tin Can Whiplash off of Indestructible Boys Design of Blog provided this little reference document for us, and thank you, Tin Can. So we use the 5-room dungeon approach of creating conflict, like hot zones inside of an adventure structure. And so we loosely have things lined up like this. This isn't going to be a literal translation of what our players are going to be going through, of which Rel is one of them. So this won't be literally what you see, but this is a good guideline for us to be able to have a frame where these points and connectors are the natural points inside of the adventure to leading to hot zones where there's opportunities for more like planned adventures. And each one of these squares is a mile. So off of here in the wilds, this is just random encounter area. The red is on the ground, blue is in the sky. Blue are sky islands that have connections or broken connection bridges that are floating between each other. And of course, if they're broken, then they would have fallen down and probably be in the muck down here, down below somewhere. This is a hot swamp. It's basically low. It's like bayou lowlands, flooded over, rice paddy growth, bamboo forests, and hot springs. That's basically the environment that we're looking at on the ground. And floating above it are aristocratic sky communities that have for hundreds or thousands of years been ignored and have pretty much gone completely wild. So all this environment has been neglected by Ravnican culture for at least 700 years. And so there's been plenty of opportunity for nature to grow back in, all the wild creatures and non-gilded sentient creatures to claim these areas for themselves. So you have the guilds of Ravnica, which are the player character races and the assumed framework of your adventure. And then there's the Rubble Belt Wastelands, which are just destroyed metropolis, where nature reclaims and all the wild animals just migrate to in between these little, just to do another quick tangent, because that's what Saturdays are all about. If we were to look at a map of Ravnica, right? So I'm just going to slap down here real quick, black, white. Okay, so if we're looking at, say this is a 5,000 by 5,000 mile swath on the planet of Ravnica. Now, Ravnica, I think, has an 8,000 mile diameter. So this would be a good chunk of one of the sides of the planet, right? So let's just make this a 4x4 and call that 8,000 miles. And so each square is 2,000 miles, right? So this world is so old that there is no ocean exposed to the surface of the world. It has been completely paved over 100 times. And all that is left is a massive Innumipolis, where the Inumili is where the it contains the entire world, and then Polis is city. So Innumipolis is a city that covers the world. So all the actual ocean and tides and stuff are deep underground and used to generate power that then crawls its way back up into the cities to provide power. So the whole world is paved over, but you'll have these swaths of where these worms will surface and then carve across the surface of the planet. And so where these black lines are that I'm drawing here, well, I should actually probably draw them with red. So we'll go with red because gruel. But these massive swaths here are like mating patterns for these world worms that are 20 miles long, and they'll show up in herds of hundreds and just basically stripe across the surface of the planet before submerging again, and everything that they swipe across becomes just desolation. You can't stop a half-mile wide, 20-mile long worm from surfacing, destroying your city, and then sinking below again when your skyscraper at the current level is like only 500 feet off of the current pavement level. That's one-fifth the size of the worm's diameter. So you just lose. And at the scale of 2,000 miles, that's a 150-mile stripe there that stretches 3,000 miles. That is a scar that is going to take centuries to repair. And it's in these stripes that all the wildlife returns. So as we continue seeing worms show up over time and the cities can't keep up with repairing infrastructure, we end up getting all these little dotted areas where these cross over each other, and these little zones that are left in between, and we'll go ahead and drop these in with black. This becomes a zone this becomes a point of light in the world. It might be a lot smaller. It might be like this. Here's another point of light. Here's a point of light. Here's a point of light. And these are dotted. These are the different districts in the world of Ravnica. I think there's 16 of them. So all around the world, there's 16 districts. And the rest of it's basically wasteland. So like all of the, you can't see the natural ocean on the surface of it. All you can see is like like the movie Wall-E, just like that level of desolation across the entire world, except for these Judge Dredd style mega cities that are basically surfacing amongst the world. So the rest of this is wasteland, which Gruul loves. Gruul actually owns the majority of the world. It's just it's not civilized. It's not civilized culture. So it's down credited. But these little cultures, they will reach out and they will attempt to reclaim territory as time goes on to expand the size of their city. And it'll continue to expand and grow until it gets hit by worms again. And then worms come through and they just, put a torch through all of this stuff and it gets destroyed. Like, you can't control that. There goes your entire city. So now you get shrunk back down to this spot and you have to rebuild. So there's this constant flux of these cities trying to expand and being completely just smashed by worms. So there should probably be like 20 districts, but there's only 16 currently. I think there's 16. It might be 12, but there should be 20. But like half of them are destroyed half the time. So this point of light campaign exists in the world of Ravnica. It's just that the microscope is zoomed into these urban structures where there's infinite wealth, infinite mana, infinite power, and it's all mind game politics and counter-striking different factions of organizations. Planescape was probably the inspiration for this setting because there's a lot of parallels between the City of Doors and the factions of the Caged, and then the guilds of Ravnica. So hey, what's going on? 20 mile long, yeah. Yep, exactly. Because Gruul control the worms. There's worm speakers, Gruul worm speakers that can guide the worms to where they want them to go. A 17th to 20th level adventure would be a Gruul archdruid worm speaker planning to summon a swarm of worms to destroy one of the districts. Just like literally come up Dune style and smash the entire district, all like 500 miles of it, just collapse it. You could do that. That'd be a great 17th, 18th level adventure. So the Gruul don't like the cultures of Ravnica and are happy to destroy them. The worms have their own thing. The worms have to run from the Gruul because the Gruul will just eat them. There's probably entire tribes of Golgaris that are inside of the gullets of these worms, rot farming as they do. It's a new setting, same job. Let's start digging scum and make something out of it. That's what Golgari does. So you could swallow an entire clan of Golgari and they wouldn't care. They'll just thrive inside of the worm instead of outside of it. But so Gruul are basically herders. They aren't cultivators. They don't farm. They hunt or gather, and they chase herds. So they just learn to get when they feel the earthquake, they know that's worm sign. So they just fucking flee the area and they're okay. They don't do permanent structures. Unless they're making like shrines on like ley lines. Ley lines are the mana channels that run around the planet. I wouldn't be surprised if worms ran along green and red energy lines. That probably would make a lot of sense. But when they all bind together, that becomes a nexus. That becomes like in Strixhaven they call them gnarls, and is where a bunch of mana comes together and knots up before moving on again. And those are great places to put shrines. I would say that worms avoid gnarls. They probably actually swim and bounce over the ley lines as though they were obstacles that they had to get over. But I haven't thought that thoroughly about it yet because I haven't needed to. But it's just an idea that's percolating back there. But that's a crash course on Ravnica. And so when you're going from like this point to this point, you've got about 1,800 miles of wasteland in between you. And 1,800 miles. That's like, how broad is America? Isn't America like 2,000 miles wide? So that's like culture on East Coast being different from culture on West Coast. Very, very different location. Like everything in between is wasteland. And there could be entire city-states, entire nations, like the size of, Serbia. You could drop Serbia somewhere in the Dakotas. And California and New York would probably never know about it unless they had somebody come and tell them about it. You can have entire guild-free cultures that exist in these wastelands, and that can be the theme of a campaign on Ravnica. That's not Ravnica focused at all, but still using Magic the Gathering color mana system because of the ley line system. So anyway, those are some of the ideas. So that's how Ravnica works in general. So when we're actually the actual task that we have at hand right now is all this rubble that's been neglected for God knows how long has naturally grown over, and creatures have moved in, and they're making use of the environment the way that the environment can be made use of. On the ground here in this particular 10-mile area, we have remnants of steam pipe networks, of which still partially work after all this time. It's now overrun with magmen and steam methods that are basically controlling the system. Above that, floating on the islands above, on the sky islands anywhere from 200 to 1,000 feet above ground, is it's a D8 plus 2. Sorry, that would be 300 to 1,000 feet above ground. All these floating islands. This was Simic at one point. It's blue-green. Simic are the geneticists, the polymorphers, the ones that fiddle with, like directly take a hand in trying to specifically manipulate genetics to make better creatures, to make more survivable creatures, either for war, tasks, or pleasure. So this was an aristocratic community that's floating over the steam vent region. We already know that these two areas coincide with each other, so it's just one pylon going from the ground up. So you can use that as basically a stairway to get to the Sky Islands without having to figure out how to bridge the 300-foot gap from the ground to the top of to the bottom of the floating islands. And once you're on the bottom, then you have to crawl your way all the way up on top of the floating island. Or everyone on the team has flight, but not everyone on the team has flight. But then to make it worse, there's flying predators in the area that make just flying out in the open kind of fucking dangerous. So that's what we're going to explore today. Using the Oracle system, we had developed unique. Let's see, where is it? There we are. We created unique zones for each of these, and different environments, creatures to encounter, and hazards to deal with on each of the 5 red nodes. And have basically built a mini plot between magmen, steam methods, and other creatures that are basically surface creatures. And now we have the floating islands that we're going to do the same treatment to today. So we have the steam vents, the 5 areas on the ground, and using the 5-room dungeon system of guardian, puzzle, trap, treasure, and boss layers. We do the same thing down here. With floating islands, traps, puzzles, guardians, boss layers, and treasure nodes. That's what these 5 points basically represent, those 5 keywords. Divide them up accordingly. That's the general idea of how a 5-room dungeon works. Each room has a different theme of either being a trap, a guardian, a puzzle, a boss lair, or a treasure trove. So those are basically your 5 rooms in any 5-room dungeon. You can make a 5-room dungeon of 5-room dungeons. Each room in the 5-room dungeon zooms in as its own 5-room dungeon, which if you zoom in becomes its own 5-room dungeon. So you can have 25 rooms in a dungeon in one 5-room dungeon, depending on the scale that you're working at. 5-foot scale is the minimum size. You can have a 5-foot dungeon at the 5-foot scale, and that whole dungeon can be one node inside of a 50-foot scale 5-room dungeon, where you've got one dungeon space occupying 50 feet. So each of your 5-room dungeons fit inside of a 50-foot space if you wanted to get really I can't believe I'm losing this word. It's when the pattern replicates at different scales. I can't believe why am I not getting this word? Mandelbrot set. It's a mathematical equation where it scales up perfectly. I can't believe I'm blanking on that word. Anyway, so 5-room dungeons at the 5-foot scale fits inside of one room at the 50-foot scale 5-room dungeon. That whole 50-foot scale 5-room dungeon fits inside of one room at the 500-foot scale dungeon. and that one room at the 500-foot scale becomes one room in the 5,000-foot square or 1 mile squares, and that's where we're at here, 1 mile square. So this 1 mile square here, thank you, Timely Timer, has a 5-room dungeon at the 500-foot scale inside of, well, 1 mile scale, and then this node can have 5 dungeons at the 500-foot scale, and then each one of those nodes at the 50-foot scale, it's not hologram. Why can I not remember this word? It's like on the tip of my fucking tongue. Fractal. Thank you, God. It's just a fractal of itself, where it's just constantly expanding or zooming in. 5 feet is the minimum scale, and in Spelljammer, 1 billion miles is the maximum scale. So from 5 feet to 1 billion miles, Bob's your uncle. You can scale in or out as you need. So that's just scaling systems of design in your narrative environment. You can scale like that to approach different, like literally different scales of adventure. So, but it's also really useful when you're mapping stuff. Now, I do not plan to zoom in at this 1 mile scale and create 500-foot dungeons here and then zoom in again and do 25 50-room dungeons and then scale in again and do 125 5-room dungeons at the 5-foot scale. Generally, when somebody dives into these areas, when I DM, I keep everything theater of the mind until you actually need an environment map to traverse a region or know where your obstacles and stuff in battle are. And at which point, I'll just make a really cheap doodle map. Like, here's some rocks over here. Like, here's a tree that you can climb, and here's a ledge that gives these people high ground, and this is the low ground, and there's like water coming through here, like that. Like this is the level of map that I do when I'm live DMing, because most of the stuff that I do, to be honest, is improv. Once I have a basic idea of what the creatures are, what the scenario is, and what the mood of the team is, that's how I'll set up and build my adventures. So that's basically how I run. So I don't need to do a specific map room for all 125 rooms in this node throughout the ground, and then do it again for the Sky Islands. I can just have a general gist of like what's going on in this region, or this region as a whole, and how do these 5 different points of interest interact with each other to create a narrative inside of that space. So that's what we're going to do. We did that with the ground level and the steam vent layer, and now we're going to do that for the elevated layer. So what is Oracle dice? This is something that's buzzed around YouTube for a while, and I've been using it since about 1994, where I take 2 dice. You take 2 dice, and one die is the question die and one is the answer die. When you ask a yes or no question, you get a number from 1 to 6. The lower the number, the more likely it is. And then this die, the answer die, answers, was that actually yes or no? This determines how likely yes is, and this determines whether you hit yes or not. It's just roll 2 dice, and if the second one is equal to or higher than the first die, the answer is yes. If the roll is lower, the answer is no. So when I roll a 1 on the question, I can't roll below a 1. So the answer is absolutely 100% yes. It is always true. So when I ask, like for example, are there more connections on the ground to the Sky Islands other than the steam vent exchange that we already determined are overlapping? We know this one overlaps for real, so you can on foot get from the ground to the Sky Islands. But is there another pathway that does that for us? So we'll ask the dice. I got a 4 and a 6. So the 4 is the number that I need to hit or beat for the answer to be yes, and a 6 is equal to or higher than the 4, so the answer is yes. If I rolled a 6 as the question, it is highly unlikely that that is the case. But if I happen to roll a 6 as the answer, if I get box cards, the answer is despite all probability, this is actually true. As opposed to double 1s, which is this is so obviously true, you don't even have to roll for it. But despite it all, it almost didn't work out. So this 1 is how likely is it absolutely guaranteed to be if you roll a 1. But if I roll a 1 as the answer, even though it was guaranteed to happen, something must have made it really difficult to achieve. As opposed to if I rolled a 1 and a 6, it is guaranteed to happen, and it happened absolutely the best way it could have. So it's like the perfect coupling of these two things. The thing that could have happened happened perfectly. as opposed to it absolutely should not happen, and it absolutely did not. So that makes it even worse. So on a scale of 1 to 6, basically, you get a level of how likely is it and how intensely was it achieved. Either intensely likely to succeed and absolutely minimal effort in the worst way possible it was achieved, or it's absolutely not supposed to happen, but in the absolute miracle of miracles, it actually did happen, and that makes it really cool. So this blend of probabilities helps focus the direction of the oracle questions. Like 4 out of 6. So it's like a 50-50 chance that there are other connections, but yes, there's absolutely another connection. Now, so I know in the previous hex that we had built, or tile that we had built, there were sky islands there, and there were all these vines, like willow branches and vines and reeds and roots that hung down from the sky islands, some of them low enough to actually touch the surface of the water. Is that the case in this environment as well? Does a similar circumstance exist that would allow characters to climb up beanstalks and bamboo shoots and willow branches to be able to get to the bottom of the island, and then to be able to use like rock climbing to be able to crawl around its surface? Do those things exist? I rolled a 3 and a 2. So the answer is probably, but no. So that tells me that but we know there's other ways for the team to get to the surface, to get to the islands from the surface. So we know there's a steam vent climb, but none of the plants are connecting you to the ground. So is that because the water here is so much hotter, that sort of plant isn't flourishing? And the dice say 4 on 4, big surprise. So that is absolutely, it's you hit the number that you're supposed to hit. That can be special unto it. Basically, that means exactly right. So the way I posed that question was, is it because it's too hot? 4 on 4 means, despite how likely that is exactly how it is. So that's how Oracle dice work. In any of those circumstances, like if the number is supposed to be a 6 and you hit a 6, it's absolutely supposed to be. It absolutely happened, and it absolutely happened exactly the way it was supposed to, as opposed to a 6 and a 1, right? So anyway, that's how those doubles work, high-low, and the two narratives. Between those 3 mechanics, you can randomly generate literally anything. All you have to do is just ask yourself yes/no questions, and use the sliding scale of probabilities on a scale of 1 to 6 to help guide those questions. So yeah, it's too hot. So what is that? So I get to spin off some iterative ideas from this, since we're starting to have brain think stuff. So I'm going to just start jotting down some notes about floating islands, random threats, empowered magmen. These are the creatures down here, so we're going to let those sit for now. And we got some steam vent creatures here. And okay, so we have the steam vents. Let's pull this up to the narrative. Let's see. Put that up there. Now we got floating islands. Empowered magmen. Okay, here we are. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Great. Good. I'm just figuring out my formatting here. Okay, so now that I've got those down, I should probably put this down as region descriptions here. Steam vents here. What's up? Just giving me right on, man. This is exactly how I run campaigns from level 1 to 20 when I'm building random stuff. When you're running a campaign from level 1 to 20, at the first few levels, I don't do anything important. It's just your team getting their bearings, getting a grip on the world, mostly doing investigation and social encounters, very little combat if I can avoid it. and to give them a feel for the place and to start forming opinions about what they like and they don't like inside of the game. And once they start establishing what they're leaning towards, that's where I start designing things with that thought in mind. What's grabbing at them, and what components do I need to make the story work that I don't have to shove down the team's throat, that I can keep background to emerge later as they start peeling open the conspiracies of the onion, as it were. And they'll get to the stuff they don't know about yet that maybe I had planned. Like I might have adventures and dungeons and stuff that I had planned from, like, I designed years ago that I never had a practical use for. But suddenly I find a scenario during a campaign, it's like, this would actually fit in there. Let's scale it to challenge the team at the level that they're at. But I can use the themes of this idea to frame that around. Because once you have the framework of a scenario that has complex interactions with needs, challenges, demands, preferences for the NPCs and the environment, then the adventure just basically kind of sculpts itself just by being able to jump to a logical, simple conclusion that takes the next step. Because the team of the players are going to come up with more innovative ideas, but the groupthink nature of humans generally devolves to the least common denominator conclusion. So they'll come up with very simple ideas, but very complicated ways to achieve them, which is great gaming. The simple solution helps a DM lock in on what the next step is and what's the most logical next steps that they could take to plan for. So you only need to really plan for 2 or 3 steps at a time. And that's all the prep that you need until the next session, when they decide to take whichever step that is. And then you get your new step, and you can see how much of the old stuff is still relevant and how much more new stuff do I need to take as the next step that they're taking. Very much the same way in a hex crawl. Are they going to veer, if they're here, are they going to veer left? Are they going to veer right? Which way are they going to go? And I know generally the direction of what's out there, and so I'll be able to have an idea to throw on a random encounter at them to chew up some mana, throw some abilities around, and get a general sense of the area by either discovering a monster, a treasure, a forgotten item, a location. These nouns propel verbs. So if you drop a noun into an encounter, 1 or 2 nouns is all you really need per encounter. A person, place, or thing is basically it. And that can be divided up in any number of ways. Anything they can interact with, anything that they can explore, anything that they can interact with. A creature to talk to, a place to crawl around in, and a thing to mess around with. Those are basically the only 3 things that characters ever need to do. And as long as you're including 2 of them, you've got a dynamic environment. If you don't use all 3 at the same time, you can oscillate between the 3 perpetually. Like you have those, like you can have, because 1 or 2 things will always be missing. So like a small transition can just have 1 element. And once they move through that element and they make a discovery about that one particular noun of 3, if you only had a person, like they end up talking to a person in a bar. The bar's not very interesting, but the person is. And they send you on a quest to a cave where there's an item that you want. So you're on your way to the cave over land, and then you encounter, say, wreckage. And there's items all strewn about the wreckage. And while you're exploring the items, now bandits show up to get the second batch of stuff that they didn't get. So all the cool loot that the players found, they now realize that's bandit loot. Now they have to fight the bandits to get the loot. And so the environment isn't nearly as important because it's just a caravan. But now it's the loot that you want that became the priority. And now bandits are introduced as a challenge. When you defeat the challenge, you have the loot. Now you have the environment issue of, what are we going to do with all this extra stuff? We're supposed to be on an expedition to this cave to fight these monsters. Now we have all this loot that isn't going to help us in battle, but we're crazy to leave it behind. What are we going to do about that? That becomes their next challenge. It's simple. You either bury the stuff, take it back with you, delay your mission, take it with you, and hope that you come out of the mission with stuff that you can carry all of it back, or select from all that stuff what you think is best. So those are basically the only 3 things you can do. Take it back, go forward with it, or bury it and grab it later. So whatever the team decides to do, that's fine, but they're making that decision for themselves, and whichever decision they choose is going to trigger another event dealing with it. If they go back, they're going to get in trouble for they're potentially going to get scolded for delaying their mission, and the mission could become more complicated because they let it go too long. If they head directly for the mission, they have more loot with them. They might attract more attention than they otherwise would have, increasing complexity. Or if they bury the loot, when they come back, they may have found that somebody found it and dug it up and stole it themselves. Now they have a complete unknown variable to go chase down, which creates a new leg of adventure. So all these things just keep curling into each other off of any random decision that the team ends up making. Simple solutions creates complicated pathways that the DM can lean into depending on what the team is enjoying doing. And that's heavy improvisation. But you have to know your environment, and you have to be comfortable with knowing very little. Like, I only need to prep 10, maybe 20% of an adventure, and then I can improv the rest, because the way that I DM is super ramshackle. Like, everything looks like garbage all the time when I'm running as a DM, so you never know if I planned this or if this is something I just improvised, because it all looks like shit. So if I whipped out a full color map and slapped that down, and then when you guys started to run off in a random direction, I started feeding you stick figure trees and stick figure rocks and stick figure foliage. You're like, oh yeah, Phil didn't plan for this, obviously. Let's try to suspend our disbelief as we continue pursuing this. We now know that Phil is talking out of pocket. If I just had a shitty map the entire time, you will never know, is that something I planned or didn't plan? And what's just tumbling into place that, like, I ended up I could do like 10 minutes ago, and it's improvised, but I had enough buffer time during combat to create the next scenario in my head. That's good flow. That is good flow, and I generally need good sleep and a relatively positive day for me to be able to make that stuff work really well. But after 37 years of doing it, even a shitty day is probably going to feel fine to most players. So I have that pride. So major tangents this morning because we're talking shop and game design and stuff. But back on task, we're doing regional descriptions. So let's see. We're going to start doing Oracle stuff. So we know. Let's figure out how we want to change these numbers. There. So I'm going to get rid of all this, and I'm going to renumber these things. I know number 4 is the same steam vent as we had in number 3, or on the ground. So I'm going to take the ground here, go up here to the steam vent control, copy this, and paste it down into the floating islands area because it's the same region, because it's just one giant structure from the ground up into the sky islands with bridges coming off of it. So that is a strong point of contact for like a central hub for this entire tile region if we want it to be. Hey, what's up? What's your favorite book you've ever read? The favorite book I've ever read? Oh, Jesus. That's a great question. Give me a second to consider my answer here, and I want to mess around with the Sky Island structure here because I want to have more connectors than I do. Favorite? Well, let's see. I guess that would be whichever book I've read the most. And so I would say the book that I've read more, I've read Starship Troopers 4 times. So I would say that's probably one of my favorite books. I've read the Jack L. Chalker Soul Rider series, the Soul Rider saga. I've read that 3 times. So that's probably my favorite book series. Yeah, I would say yeah, Starship Troopers and the Soul Rider saga by Jack L. Chalker. Starship Troopers is what John Hyland, and Jack L. Chalker did the Soul Rider series. Soul Rider, it's hard to get those books. I think they have them on Audible, but those came out in the 70s and 80s. So they're really hard to get a hold of these days. My mother was a big sci-fi enthusiast, and so she kept all. She read a lot of Jock L. Chalker, and she kept all of those books, and so I inherited them and enjoyed them thoroughly. But since you won't be familiar with and probably never have the opportunity to read the Soul Rider saga, it's a world of wizards. It's a world controlled by wizards, in a world that has shotguns and telephones and radio and closed broadcast television. There are no TV stations because the people that created the technology aren't around anymore, and who took over society after the technocrats left were the wizards. And spoiler alert, since you'll probably never read it ever anyway, the whole gist of this thing is that there's these point of light. There's like 13 communities in the world, similar to what I was describing earlier, ironically. But the spaces in between is like an ethereal gray mist. And when you enter the mist, things that you think about can become true. And the more powerful you are as a caster, and you don't know you're a spellcaster or not until you enter the mists and try to do something. And so the more powerful of a spellcaster you are, the easier it is to make the things that you think about become true. So there's 13 official anchor points. It's called Spirits of Flux and Anchor is the primary book, but it's called the Soul Rider Saga. And so anchor are these points of light where there is no gray mist. There is no magic in the anchor. Everything is normal Earth as you would expect it at the level of technology of about like the 1960s, maybe. That feels about right. Yeah, 1960s technology feels about right. But then in the gray mists, there's no limits. Anything you can think of can become true. So there's all these people that when they go in the mist and they realize that creating things is disgustingly easy, they become what are known as wizards. And they generally go off into the mist and using concentration create pocket zones of anchor. It's not actually anchor, it's just their will is so powerful that they can enforce what reality, like what that house looks like, what the grass is like, what the weather is like today, what's the temperature like. These are all default base models that these powerful wizards are sustaining through their own concentration. I'm going to build a pleasant valley with some good farming communities and places for people to build houses. Here, I built a house for you. Just go farm and do stuff. And they can't create sentient life, but they can create creatures. But they want sentient. These wizards are megalomaniacs generally, or have some sort of world conspiracy plan, kind of like Fallout, the experiments that they ran in the bunker experiments, right? Each bunker had its own world philosophy, and they all wanted to implement them. So we'll go with 1, 2, 3. No, we'll do it that way. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We'll order it that way to make it easy to see. So these wizards, they would create these realities and they would maintain it, and then they would occasionally go at war with each other, which were just basically them warping reality around them while they had all these monsters that they would wish into existence fighting each other. But what would really win the day were living souls, actual people that remained alive whether you were concentrating on them or not, because they could occupy space and they can take things away from wizards. They can kill you, right? So there'd be all these crazy wizard battles in this gray mist area, and so the story was about characters that ended up in the mists and how it changed them and how they dealt with world politics and stuff. But it was all math. It was just this. It was just this substance that a super technology, a super culture had created that was basically like microcomputers. Like the entire cloud of mist that covered the planet were just basically billions of microtic computers, AI systems, that when you breathe them in long enough and you bred with them and they flowed through your bloodstream into new children, and after generations they became more and more integrated with the people that lived there. They used to have machines that would like access the cloud, as it were. It would access this cloud, and then they could program what they want. Like, it was a terraforming machine. So they would infuse this gas across the planet, and then they would terraform reality inside that planet to create a utopia. And then people would move to that utopia, and it would all be Anchor. But this place got cut off mid-process due to some galactic war that they never knew about 1,000 generations ago. So 1,000 generations later, they don't know how the technology works, but all of them physically are integrated with it because they breathe it, and it's part of their bloodstream. It becomes part of their neurocircuitry. So they now are basically able to mentally command these machines, and these geniuses, these wizards, have more neural connections, and they can understand. They have like higher level, like they're just really smart people that just get how to build things, like how logic works. So they can build these neat little logic traps that create stable points for themselves. And they can curse each other by hitting them with these complex fractal equations that would attach to this circuitry that's inside of their soul. And it would basically bond them to whatever that curse would say. Like, you can only turn left now. So for the rest of your life, anytime you wanted to turn, you could only turn left. Until you could find somebody that could break the code. So curses were programs that were forced onto people's behaviors. And there was all sorts of nasty megalomaniac stuff that people could do with that, exploring the darker side of reality. But essentially, it was like everyone had access to wish. It's just, are you only a cantrip level wisher? Or are you a full 9th level altering reality wisher? And it was basically, you would start at a certain point, and then training would be able to take you so far, but only so far. Some people were only able to create illusions, but they were incredibly convincing illusions. Other people just create shitty little stick figures, and that's it. Other people could create real stick figures, but they disintegrate when they stop thinking about them, and they might not be able to hold their own concentration very long. As opposed to incredibly focused, incredibly logical, smart people could create incredibly complex ideas and then force their will to have them be sustained until someone could break their concentration. Super fucking cool system. So, yeah, old sci-fi is fucking cool, man. Like, that's where the tropes come from. All this really crazy ideas end up getting distilled into more acceptable ideas. So, anyway, we're being random. Let's work on region descriptions. So, let's see. I have a general idea of what the floating islands have going on. And we have random threats on the Cynic Sky Islands here. And, let's see. Steam vents, enchantments, Sky Island stuff is up here. I want that there. I want this gone. They're doing ground first, steam. And now the floating islands here. So we have our Sky Islands, our general enchantments, security wards. We have some ideas about different enchantments and curse effects that can happen to characters and affect the creatures that are here. Now we have the 5-room dungeon for what those environments generally are like and how they make use of this stuff. And now we're doing the deeper description of what those steam vent areas are. So that it's taken a while to get there, but we're going to start off where we're at. Wyverns, roost equals colony of wyverns live, nest here. Apex predators, smaller birds in the region as well. And what else do we need? So we have the boss wyvern. We have wyvern younglings. We have are there any, is there any mediums? So the boss wyvern is huge. The wyvern younglings are large. Are there any other large creatures. 6 and a 3. Highly unlikely that there isn't. And look at that, I rolled a 3. The answer is no. So the wyverns are by far the largest aerial predators, being huge or large in size. And now, so are there other aerial predators that are at least medium size? 5 and a 6. Highly unlikely, but they do exist. So they wouldn't be perched here. They'll probably be in another perch elsewhere. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Do these medium-sized aerial predators, are they elsewhere? It's a dumb question, but I got a 1 and a 2. Obviously, yes, they are Kernian. It's highly likely. But that's weird that it wasn't a 1 and 1. So what's my next oracle question? I've got 3 nodes left. It can't be in 1 because that's controlled by wyverns. It can't be 4 because 4 is controlled by steam methods. So it has to be 2, 3, or 5. So roll a 6-sided die. And I got a 3. So 1, 2, 3. So point number 5 has a community of medium-sized flying creatures. And my brain immediately says, are they harpies? And the answer is 5 and a 2. So it's highly unlikely that they're not harpies. And yeah, they definitely are not harpies. So, but I like that. I like that idea of it being a flock. How about a murder of crows? Yes. So there is a murder of crows. Are these like sentient crows? Yes, they are. 5 and a 6. Highly unlikely that they be sentient, but in fact that they are. So that must mean they have like rudimentary intelligence. Are they like Kenku or Aarakocra? 5 and a 6. Highly unlikely that they would be, but they are in fact a bird type race. So does that mean that there's very few of them? 2 and a 4 means, yeah, there's very, very few of them. So are they refugees from a different tile? 1 and a 2. So we're going to have a little colony of I guess, crow-like Aarakocra that are squatting here. And if we go back to the main map here, we're in node. This is the tile that we're in right now, and at the southern edge here, we now have a small clan of crow Aarakocra. So they could have come from any of these aerial hexes, right? Is that where they came from? 1 and a 5. So one of those 4 nodes is where they came from. So how about we just do a D4, where we go 1, 2, 3, or 4? Maybe that, or do we just do these 3? Let's just do those 3 as D6. 1. So there's Aarakocra that are in this community section here, which is elevated. What is that? Elevated white? Yeah, an elevated white. So we now have a Aarakocra community. So let's go fill that in on detail number 5. Crowfolk, refugees. Crowfolk fleeing southwestern tile. Is there a looming threat in that area? 1 and a 6. Is there a looming threat in the tile that they're fleeing from that the players could potentially have a problem with? The answer is fuck yes, there is. So the team does not need to interact with these crowfolk to be able to secure the area. The crowfolk are not a threat. However, if they run into them, they might be able to help gain resources and information about this tile, which might be the next tile that the team chooses for level 7 and 8. At that level, having aerial capabilities would not be that difficult for the team to get to. So it could be very realistic that this is a very aerial tile and that teams are dealing with a lot of flight stuff during this encounter, appropriate for level 7 and 8. Once they get through this tile, they move this word, they'll get into tile 8, they'll get into level 9 and 10. And that's where we would plan to end the campaign. But somewhere around here, there's probably a signal tower that they could use to call for rescue. And they just have to secure the area so that they could have an evacuation. So this is working out. So crow people, crowfolk fleeing southwestern tile, roosting, are squatting in this tile. Heavily intimidated by the steam methods and wyverns. So these guys are in a nasty spot where they are not a strong aerial power. The methods are small, but there's vast quantities of them. The wyverns, there aren't a lot of them, but they're large and huge, so they're gonna fuck you up if they catch you. And you, being medium-sized, are large enough to be a tasty meal for one of these. So the crow folk, they're basically looking for options. So I don't anticipate them being a large thing, but they are a potential unlikely ally and a resource for information to move on to the next tile if the team finds them. So again, I don't mind you guys knowing this stuff. It doesn't change anything. It just gives you more options, and then you actually have to roll through the adventure to figure out. Like maybe you end up pissing off the crow folk and make enemies out of them. Maybe you ally them but get them killed, or maybe you ally with them and they give you a safe place to take a long rest in their roosts. That would be a really great ally to gain, but you won't be able to get access to them until you've already peeled through most of the tile, digging through 3 or 4 points to actually find them. Like, these are who you'll probably find when you're ready to move out of the tile. Once the area is secured, they'll probably feel safer. They might come out and become scouts for you to provide you with more information about the regions around you. Useful allies. So I don't really have a lot to say about them. I'm just going to kind of leave this quiet here, but let's take a look at how did we structure stuff up here. Oh yeah, there's the Crowfolk fleeing southwestern tile, heavily intimidated by the steam methods and wyverns. Oh, that's right. This was going to be where we had the one of the power nodes. So security way station. So I want to refer. Right on. Well, just keep your metagaming in mind. Once you catch, because you could spot them during random encounters once you get closer to the steam vent area, or once you get past the steam vent area to the southern side, you could potentially run across them. But yeah, fun stuff. Let's go back and get rid of that. Let's go up and look at our notes about security stuff. Enchantments, effects, choose. Security wards require D4 mana to disarm. Effects, choose or roll. Divination, Boss Lair, Guardians, Magmans, Team Methods, and Cruel. We already know that. Steam Geyser. Puzzles control the steam pipe system. Boss Lair as an artificer, Steam Hub, exchange with regional schematics. What else did we have? Hold on. I should probably divide this up. I should probably use an organizational system. I just used 3 lines to separate ideas from each other. Creatures down here. Description of the floating island tiles here, the sky islands. You'll be on the ground first, so we present the ground level first. And then we have the general structure of the place above. So, let's see, defense wards, that's right. Enchantments. Just looking at defense wards, unreliable gravity. Oh, that's right. We were trying to. Okay, so we got the crow people figured out, but the original question that we were asking was, what is the other way for the team to get to the Sky Islands if not the steam vent or not flight? There's another access point somewhere in here that they can use to get onto the Sky Islands. Is it on, where is it? Island 1, 2, 3, or 4? 4 and a 3. It's not of those 4. Maybe it's 5, 3, and 2. 4 and a 4. So 5, 3, and 2. 1 to 2 is 5, 3 to 4, and 5 to 6. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So is it that middle one? I like that. Yes, it is. Okay, weak gravity. So point number 3 is access point. On-ramp. We'll call it the on-ramp. On-ramp from the surface. Sunken Sky Island with collapsed bridges. Grants path onto the Sky Islands. Which means I want to I'm going to sever ties here. Make it timely timer. Severed path. Keep in mind each one of these squares is a mile. So this is free floating on its own. This is dropped in elevation. This dropped with it. This severed connection. I think we severed connection here. So we're basically looking at a structure like this. Here's the steam vent. Here's node. Here, let's do it like this. Make it a little bit more literal. Here's your steam. Here's area 5. Here's the steam vent. We'll do. Here's the ground. Here's that Sky Island number 3 here. And we got it's got this awesome tilt to it. So this should sever here because of that tilt. So this whole structure is like a building that's like at a 45-degree angle, and that's causing the whole structure to tip down, and you can get access to it from the ground. But then you lose contact with it here. So each one of these squares is 5,000 feet. So that's like a 1,000, like a 2,000 foot gap there to get from this island. It's attempting, like struggling, like it's hanging. Each one of these nodes is an anchoring point. So the island, like it floats independently. So these sky bridges that connect between have like these like structural strength points that are maintained by anti-gravity. And those like gazebos or parks or monuments and shrines. They're meant to be places, like they're designed to be places of rest. You walk for a mile, and then a mile later, there's another resting point. It makes it really easy for people in these sky islands to be able to just kind of drift around. It's like, hey, let me meet you at the gazebo between point A and B. It's like, awesome, yeah, I'll meet you at the third gazebo from A to B. And then you'll get together with what would have been here, but this one's disappeared, so it's like floated off into another someplace, who knows. Maybe it's like off over here now, because it broke free from its mooring and drifted. So there's a floating island that's now broken off course, and maybe that caused this to skew with it as it got as it tilted and eventually broke. But these two are connected just fine. But this one is lower, lower. But maybe that was on purpose, so it remains connected. But that's a full connection there, and that's a severed connection that's going to require. Oh. Here. This is awesome. Yeah, so that's basically from this edge looking forward. This is basically how the Sky Islands are arranged right now. So this one's got this mad tilt to it, which is inviting to get on, but you could theoretically like use this high point here and jump to use that as a gliding effort, because like Cloud Strider, for instance, is one of the I think is it sustainable or is it a maneuver? I don't remember. I think it's sustainable, but you can fly up to your movement per round, and then you fall. But if you've got momentum with you, you could potentially like Mario jump yourself across the void here. And as long as you have 1,000 feet of elevation, you can have 2,000 feet of descent and still be able to stick the landing, but you are descending 1,000 feet. So you're going to have to figure out a way to not take impact from that, which I believe the handy dandy cloud striding spell allows you to do. Let's go down. I think it's Cloud Strider. Now, while the power is sustained, you can fly using your walking speed. You must end your turn standing on a surface that will support you, or the power ends. When the power ends, you benefit from the effect of a Featherfall spell. So you can use your flight to launch yourself off of this high ground, this high tip island, and you would be able to have like maybe like with 40 feet speed, assuming like a barbarian or a monk or something at 5th level, a 40-foot speed, and then you take the dash action. That's 80 feet that you can fly, and then it cuts out, and then the Featherfall comes in. But if you're using momentum, we can rule that you can glide. 2 feet of movement is 1 foot. No, it's 1 foot of movement, 2 feet of drop. If you have the actual glide ability, it's 2 feet across, 1 foot down, like a Simic Hybrid or a Hadozi. If it's a Featherfall spell, it's 1 foot forward, 2 feet down. So you can drift with Featherfall at an angle like this, and if you have glide capability, you can actually glide like that. So it's a subtle difference, but it's a big ratio difference of twice the distance. But you can theoretically jump from here to here. It's unlikely that you'd be... Well, this is like if that's 5,000 feet... This would be miles high if that was 5,000 feet. So this would be 3 miles high, which is more than we... This is apparently not to scale. Let's make this at scale. Everything's awesome until you realize your scale is off. Still too much. Let's see. Yeah, everything was awesome until I realized my ratios were like way fucked. That's sad because I really liked how that looked. Transform. No. It's more like that. But we can see those distances a little bit better. That makes more sense. Oof. Yeah, that's a distance. Glide might not be so helpful there. This is working out. Hey, this all worked out. Cheers. Tilt those. One, two, three, four. Five. There we go. What are we going up here? There, like that. So yeah, that's the general environment. And then we're, oh wait, grab our number 5. There. Cool. Hey, what's up? And maybe it's just my dulcet tones that are lulling you into slumber. Unironically, the Wyvern Sky Perch is the highest elevation, nearly just further up than the Steam Vents, Control Exchange, and then the Crowfolk Roost is the next highest. And we got the ground unit here, the third, and then we got 2 and then 1. So okay, great. So we are parsing out some stuff. Boss Wyvern, Wyvern Younglings. Let's see. What kind of structures were here originally? Let's check our environment, because we know there's an artificer that's running around up here trying to figure things out. Yeah, that feels good. So whether you go to 4 or 3, this is your onload. This is your on ramp, and then finding a way across the void. Oof, these two islands are separated. That makes it difficult. So those are 3 regions that are separated. 3 and 6, yes. I feel like none of these are powered by the Steam anymore. 6 on a 6, yeah, none of these are powered at all. So just the Steam Vent is operating unto itself. 3, 1, and 2 don't benefit from that. So they're on their own system, which is what caused the magic to skew. This is all turning up yeses. Yeah, that's all yeses. Okay, so each one of these nodes can be their own thing. And give me a second here, I want to check on this. Steam Vent is 1. Should I have a separate? Yeah, I should have a separate thing for each of these. So there's going to be a community center background for each of these. We know the hub Wyvern Roost used to be. I'm going to put in parentheses around it what it used to be. And so the maybe the Wyvern Roost was it a data center? 2 and a 3. Data center. Let's see, is number 2 security exchange? Security, one-on-one security. Do the islands need to be attached by bridges to be able to affect each other's security? 6 and a 3, so no. Is this because does 1 and 2 work together, but 3 is isolated, and 4 and 5, they're all 1 and 2 are connected, but each of the rest are isolated. 6 and a 4, no. You're confusing me. Is there a Tesla system of etheric communication between the different towers? 6 and 3, no. 6 and a 3, but was there? 5 and a 6. So there was an ether connection between the different islands, whether there was bridges connecting them or not. So was the steam generating mana power that the islands were able to collect via mana and mana collector antennas. 3 and a 3. That's exactly how it used to work. But those systems are largely down. Yes, because they need to be rebooted? No. Were they intentionally down? Yes. Super long time ago? Super long time ago. So they aren't broken, they've just been intentionally turned off. Is that different from needing to reboot? Yes, it is. That means that if they can get them... Oh, it's damaged. No. Security protocols in place have gone rogue. No. I mean, they have, but yeah, 2 and a 4. But for the control system, so is the control system security network? That's what's in node number 2, 1 and 2, of course. Living spells. There's a rogue AI, mana intelligence. This is where that fun stuff comes in. Let's go up here to some of the what is the difficulty for moderate AI systems? Hold on. Wrong in the document, Kearney. I'm looking for the difficulty of disarming magical enchantments and traps. There it is. Moderate, 2 hours, 4 mana. Moderate. Here's our effects. Security wards. D4 times D6 lightning damage. I love that. So we can fetch. Oh god, because that levitation. God, that levitation enchantment could actually be really good. So the way the way the levitation trap hits is that if you hit a spot, you basically start floating, and there's nothing for you to physically contact, so you're just stuck hanging in air for however long the effect lasts. The original design would be until somebody spoke released the magic effect from you. but it's effectively a way to capture somebody and hold them in place as evidence of them not belonging there unless they have the ability to break out of the magic and then navigate that space. But a clever team that got zapped by a levitation spell for a number of hours, and that's going to happen in security area 2. I actually want the security system to be on 3. Yes, I do. I actually want this to be node number 3, so you have access to it right away. We'll change that up because this is going to work out better mechanically from dungeon design perspective. Having the security system be part of the on-ramp means that you can potentially make use of some of this stuff as you get onto the on-ramp. So that becomes number 3. So number 2 is going to be something different. So we have the steam vent already resolved from last time, and now we have the third node basically resolves living spells. Rogue AI system has security network access. Let's bump that to here. So that really old style of like mashup, being like Magitech, like super old science is now what magic is. That bend I have towards doing that is definitely an influence from Jack L. Chalker's Soul Rider series. The reason it was called a Soul Rider series is because the nano computers that exist in this terraforming mist has been left rogue for so long that it eventually just kind of thought its way into AI and became sentient unto itself. And since it just basically existed in this cloud, it was kind of a god. But there was some people that were born that the stuff that got infused into them just by random, genetic chance, were suitable to connect with this AI. So like it became like a voice, like a conscience, like a Jiminy Cricket conscience in their head. But it was actually the AI system, and these things were called Soul Riders, where they would find people that they could directly communicate with so that the world could let their will be known. And they always thought that they ended up thinking they were gods. And one of the main characters in the story had this capability, and then coupled with this AI, and then it began breaking down the mental barriers and psychological damage inside of the character to the point where they became an empty vessel that the AI then just basically was able to manifest its will through physically. And it was interesting. Like these AI things didn't have the ability to actually manipulate anything. They could observe things, but they didn't have access to any programming protocols that would let them manifest stuff from the ether. So all they could do is observe and think, and they've been there for thousands of years having these observations and thinking about how society works and like what's going on. And then they started realizing that some of these people, when they passed through them, they could connect to them and hear their thoughts, and their thoughts could be fed back to them. Thus, the Soul Rider, they basically would just overlap over people and fuse with the stuff that's floating around inside of their genes, and they became Soul Riders, and then basically became like living sorcerers that didn't have to know the math. All they had to do is have a will to do something, and the computer would do the math for them. So basically, these Soul Riders were like using ChatGPT, while the wizards in the world were actual coders that had to bash out the code themselves by hand. They had to create basically C++ programs in their head and maintain the entire formula of what the run command was. They had to be able to envision the entire program at once to be able to execute it. While these soul writers were able to say, I want an apple. And they don't have to even know what a fucking apple is. You know, they can just think of something. It's like, I want this one. That's a dumb example, sorry. But like, they could wish for an apple would appear in their hand. With them not knowing how to materialize an apple, the computer would do all the work for them. And this is one of the main characters. There was a number of main characters that had different levels of power and approached the world from very different perspectives because of what their limits were. There was a soul rider with unlimited power that all it wanted to do was change wrongs in the world because it had the power to do it. There was another character that had so little magic that they could only create illusions, but they were a caravan captain. They would lead resource material caravans from these anchor points that could farm to these outlying wizard communities that needed resources and souls. So like there would be in exchange for not being overrun by monsters from these wizards, the anchors would sacrifice X amount of living souls that just reached like maturity age, like age 16 up. It'd be a slew of children that were selected in a religious rite to be sacrificed, quote unquote, to these different wizard communities. And the anchor people don't know anything about these wizard societies. Only the people that were in the mists knew about them. But these anchors had a deal that they would give away so many children each year to these wizard points to be able to create their own utopian society with fresh genetic stock every year. So anyway, so one of the main characters was somebody who started off shepherding these sold souls to these wizards, and they knew all these different locations and how all these dynamics worked with each other without knowing what this mist was. He just knew that if he concentrated on something, an image of it could appear. And he was really good at creating false images. So he was like a really good rogue with a shotgun, basically. And then there was a soul rider, which was a sorcerer. And then the other main character ended up being hyper intelligent, realizing that magic was real when she was sold into slavery and went into the mists, started realizing that she could manipulate it, and she ended up getting cursed by a bunch of different wizards to have extreme limitations on what she was allowed to do. And by the end of the book, she was able to strip off all the curses, take vengeance on the people against her. And her end state, so the sorcerer basically became a god. The writer, the outlander, the caravan captain, he ended up becoming master of the anchors because he was pragmatic and had a good relation between both Outworlds and the anchor points to be able to create a society that would work for both of them. And then this mega wizard who broke free of her curses, she got built, she got reformatted so that mist wouldn't touch her. So she couldn't use any magic, but no magic could affect her. So if you wanted to kill her, you had to do it with your own fucking hands, or put a bullet through her. But she's absolutely void of any kind of magical effect. You can't see her unless you can physically see her. You can't talk to her unless she's within range of talking to her. While everyone else, like, they could throw thoughts to each other and they could project images of things and they could track people through the mists. Because the AI, if they had the right sequencing program, they could pick up on your signature and they could find you. She's blind to them. You had to actually physically knew where she was in these blinding mists to be able to locate her. It was a cool trio. Super sorceress, emperor of the world, and somebody who was completely disconnected from magic, which was like the most dangerous threat in the mists. So the sorceress, she had no power in Anchor. Matson, the caravan guy, he ended up having ultimate power in the anchors because of his political power. The sorcerer had no power there; he had all power. In the mists, she was supreme power because she could wish anything into existence, and he had nothing. And then Cass, the other character, was completely unaffected by everything, and she acted as a balancing point between. So it was a really cool triad of characters that just went from knowing what they knew in the beginning, which is nothing, to some, to becoming these world powers that could affect everything. It was a 7-book series, And man, it was a hell of a ride, but it was incredibly worth it. All sorts of crazy crap and political ideas, and like what do people with infinite power do? How do they abuse it? Stuff like that. Yeah, some of it was pretty racy, but it was really cool conceptual stuff. So anyway, Ethernet, the cloud, Steam Vent Control. Let's see. On-ramp this. Okay, so the Steam Vent Control used to connect to the security system, but that's been severed. Steam Vent. Okay, so the Steam Vent and the security system still have connection? No, they don't. Steam security section 1 and 2. Is it 1 and 3? Oh, it's 1 and 3. Okay. So 2 of them are still connected. It's 3 and 1. Even though they're physically disconnected, their Wi-Fi systems still work together. Wyvern 1 is the problem. Let's see. Security system. That's the data center, security, Steam control, which is the power center. This is where the MacGuffin is located. Right. Right on. They're cool, man. They're cool. They're pretty mature. There's some really racy content in there. But it's a fascinating series. Maybe it was 5 books. I might be remembering wrong. Yeah, no, I think it was 5 books. Yeah, super fucking cool books. Just rolling through some dice here real quick. So we got living spells, ramp to the surface. Okay, so living spells are going to be one of the big problems. Let's see. Was number 2 like a garden menagerie sort of thing? 4-2, no. Was it a research facility? Yes. So it's genetic research stuff. Is that what we got going on in here? Yes, it was. Let's see. Has security magic active. So this is the hard road. It's the obvious path, but it's difficult because the living spells and the different trigger trap effects that are going on. Then we go to number 2, which is the living forest, genetic engineering. This is going to be where our sap rolling tokens are at. Shambling mound, assassin vines, I had something, I just lost it. Oh, and carrion crawlers. So this island, this number 2, is basically going to be overgrown with forest. Plant on plant, yeah, plant on plant violence. Instead of so all the plants basically are feeding on are trying to mulch each other so they can absorb their own nutrients. Do they mulch each other? They tear apart. Is the flesh of plants useful to other plants? Yes, it is. So a shambling mound eating a bunch of sap rolling tokens basically feeds the shambling mound. Yes, it does. 6 on 3 is a no. Carrion crawler breaks materials down. No, it goes after. Is there flesh-like creatures in the area that need to be concerned about? Okay, so let's roll a d10 on the blue and green. Blue is a 9, green is a 2. So let's go to our random table of creatures. Nine and a 2. Give me a second. I just got to find the list. Monsters. 9 invisible stalkers. Jesus. And 2 on green is crawl. That makes sense with the carrion crawler. Holy shit. Okay. I'll do it like this. Team plants. Team bugs. There, this node's getting locked down pretty good. We'll go with hazards. Black puddings. Poison gas flowers. Is there another plant? Sickening. Pollen equals lose action and bonus action. Confusing pollen equals random action. Forced move, random direction. Attack someone. Melee, prone, act normal. There, I like that. see. Is there something else? And overgrown rune traps. Oh my god. Living spells. Your 5th level characters, so 1st and 2nd rank spells. Let's just grab let's just make a quick list of what these living spells can be. See if we can come up with some interesting ideas here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we're going to crack open the master list of spells from the Color Mana Spell Point variant rule system. Here are all the spells that exist. All 400-ish of them. And we're dealing with up to 3rd level spells. So we're going to roll a d6, 1 to 2, 3 to 4, and then 2nd level is 5 to 6. So we'll do level of spell, color of spell, or maybe we'll just go down specifically through here, just run through the numbers. So let's start off with, so we have 6 of these that we're going to do. Let's just do them rapid fire. So that's going to be 2, 1, 2, 1. No, it's cantrip. Cantrip, 1. Cantrip, 2. So let's take a look at cantrips real quick. There are 27 cantrips. Let's go to our ally, random.org, random.org. What is the big fuss about? Truly random. Let's go 1 to 27. A 1, a 23, 25. 1, 23, 25. So, number 1, off the cuff, obviously, pretty easy to find. Ooh, Acid Splash, how appropriate. And then 23 and 25 will be easy enough because we just go to the end of the 27, 26, 25. Thorn Whip. That's so perfect. Equals Thorn Whip. 1d8 damage plus pull you 20 feet to center plus restrain and constrict. 1d8, no, 1d6. And then cantrip number 3 is spare the dying, huh? That's creepy as shit. Let's look up spare the dying to remind us what that does. You touch a living creature that has 0 hit points. The creature becomes stable. Oh god. Interesting. We're actually going to make that a global enchantment. That is fascinating. So let's re-roll this one. It's going to be a 2nd level spell. And so let's. So that's awesome. These are living spells. These are free roaming balls of energy that are built around these spells. So if you run across an acid living spell, it's basically going to be an ooze or a ball of light or something that just basically comes trundling up at you. And while it occupies space with you, it does 2d6 acid damage. You can save for half. There you go. A thorn whip might be like a bramble, like a bramble reed that comes rolling up to you, and then it shoots out lashes of tentacles that grab and pull you towards it, then wraps itself around you, and then starts to squeeze the life and blood out of you until you're just a little corpse inside of its ball, and then it would roll off. But while you're on this island space, there's a global enchantment of Spare the Dying, where if you're killed by this stuff, you're actually just stabilized at 0 hit points and held in stasis. So, oh god. So that means that plants are growing out of people that would kill them. That's horrible. That's, oh god. Is there a chance that you're going to randomly find? Yeah, you could. Yeesh. Yeah, so there might be like some Izzet explorers or something that get caught in this mess and should be dead, but instead have trees growing out of them because they've been stuck there for over a year, maybe. No, I don't actually. I gave when I was homeless for a little bit, so when that was the case, I gave away all my stuff to basically have money for a while. So this was during college. So all the stuff that I inherited and I gained and stuff, I basically gave away to Goodwill or pawn shops. So most of my old stuff is gone at this point, but I remember them fondly. First level spell. Let's look that up. Wait, whoa. What's with the separation? Oh, because of page counts. Right. All right. Well, we can deal with that. So let's go like this. A lot of first level spells. In fact, there's 62 of them. So let's use yeoldrandom.org and 1 to 62. Number 51. Come on down. Minus 11 is 84. Shield spell, huh? Let's try that again. 40. Minus 22 is 73. Illusory script. Also not so useful. I'm cheating by rolling a lot, but hey, that's what random stuff's for. 21. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. Find familiar. Man, we're just not getting into the pain at all, are we? Let's try one more. 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38. Magic Missile, thank you. 38, Magic Missile, come on down. Great spell. Where'd you go? Knock it off. Equals Magic Missile. 2d4. We'll do 3d4. Woof, nasty. And we have 3 second levels. So let's see what we come up with. Having a magic missile chasing after you? God, how horrible. This fires off 3d for each round. You can't do anything about it. You just gotta kill it. You just gotta kill it. That's all you can really do. Just fucking kill it. Kill it fast. And 59. 59. 59. Not quite the funny number, but 59. Okay, we got a 48. That's minus 11. That's 145. Rope trick. Let's see if we go up or down, because Ray Enfeeblement's good, and so is Scorching Ray. So odd we go down, even we go up. Even we go up. Scorching Ray. Jesus. Scorching Ray. $49. Scorching Ray. Next. 33. That would be minus 26. This would be 130. Levitate. There's that levitate. How much does the Scorching Ray do? I don't remember. Let's remember together, shall we? 5e Scorching Ray. Three rays of fire. Hold them at targets. Jeez, that's a nasty spell, my guys. Let's call it piercing. And last second level spell. So these are just free roaming. Like these things think that they're patrolling and protecting the environment. 31, which is 2 less than levitate. Knock, not very useful. I mean, it'd make a loud noise constantly, but that's not so useful. $26. That's 7 less. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Gust of wind. There's a list of living spells that you could potentially run across at any given time. Plus the warding effects that are here. Jesus, this place is a nightmare. Overgrown rune traps. We'll go with the levitate. Permanent fairy fire. One and 2 equals magic mishap, because the magic's going haywire. That's great. C. Wild, magic, surge, table. we got traps and force monsters on island number 2. On island number 3, that tilts to the ground. That is that's the security center that's gone rogue and manifested itself as a bunch of living spells. So these living spells could spill themselves down onto the surface. So you can encounter living spells anywhere out here where the island spills out onto the ground, along the bridge, on the actual central location, or any of its extensions. Like this whole area, all of this could potentially have living spells just floating around its security area. And that puts us at 1150, so I'm going to be closing up soon, but we've already gotten 4 of the 5 fairly resolved. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Security way station, no. This is no longer the crowfolk fleeing crowfolk roost. Previously was what? Was this just a residential area? 1 and 5, residential. I'm gonna rearrange this table. Okay, so what I've just done is I've just rearranged these numbers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I could roll a 1d4 and limit my options to Levitate, Magic Missile, Thorn Whip, and Acid Splash. I'm going to drop Acid Splash and Thorn Whip down to, because they're... Or 1d6 again. I'm going to drop that down to 2d4. So like this 1d4 becomes a weaker damage, and then 5 and 6 becomes a larger damage. So when we go to the Aarakocra, or the Crowfolk, residential, fleeing southward tile is this tile, heavily intimidated. Home security networks, living spells, and rune traps. Same rune traps as we have here. Now we know that there's an Azet exploration team hanging around here somewhere, and they could literally be hanging somewhere if they got hit by a levitation trap and are stuck currently. So there's a lot of interesting, fun things we can potentially do with these guys. Crowfolk are fine. Steam Vent we already have set up. Just like that. Number 2 we have figured out. These are just general stuff. There's like buildings, and like you can go into the interior of these buildings if you wanted to, but it'll all be improvised. Like any random building that you want to go into, I'll be basically randoming up on the spot to entertain your idea of going into this space, which is fine with me. If you guys want to go into a random building to look for monsters to fight, I will help you find monsters inside of those rooms. But the general idea is like this is the general condition of the island that we're looking at. So this is the data center. This is the last one that we have to work on, node number 1, which also happens to be... Well, what you need to do is resolve the wyverns, resolve the steam methods, magmen, and that's technically it, because those are the only things that could potentially harass your team down here. There's also going off the roadmap and into the wilds where you could get eaten by a grue. But this is the goal of the artificers that are willing to help you. And if you take out the wyverns, the crowfolk would be happy as well. So that could potentially work out really well. So let's see what's going on here. Data center. This is the goal of the Zet, right? Exactly. Is that goal? Do I want them to be Zet or do I want them to be Simic? Simic. Is this a noble mission? No. Is it a profit mission? No. Is it a finding lost research mission? Yes, it is. Location. Searching for this location has lost. Is it spell data? No. Is it a formula, like a recipe for creating a type of creature? Yes. This location, searching this location for lost genetic formulas for a pet creature, sentient plant pet, plant eating pet, herbivore. Oh, interesting. Self-sustaining pet. They wanted to create a plant pet that you wouldn't have to walk, you didn't have to feed, that it would gather food and water from the atmosphere itself, but still be able to be cuddly and loving, even though it's a plant and not a creature. Why here? I mean, isn't that shit just readily available? Yeah, it is. But why this? Because it didn't have... Ooh. Because it's illegal. Illegal. Mind control effects would manifest. So basically, they created a plant that would release pollens that would make whoever their plant master was subservient, so they became suggestible. They can't instill that into a pet. If you give a senator a pamphlet that will basically enchant, charm, and ensorcel that senator is now compromised. So you can't have these plants hanging around buildings, so developing them became illegal. The formula to do so is already here, and I think we have indication already inside of the system that, like the confusion pollen and the do nothing pollen, where were those? That was in the area 2, living forest. The hazards, yeah, the poison gas flowers, the sickening pollen makes you lose your action because you get sick, and then the confusion pollen. This would have been what developed from these illegal plants. So the material's all around them if they can mess around with it, but I think they want the pure formula to be able to cast the spell to create them. So they could research the plants at extreme expense and inquiry from the Simic Combine, what are you experimenting with right now, young sir? Illegal plant stuff? No. It'd be easier if they can just collect the information themselves and have access to it, so they don't have to expend any guild resources developing this. Apparently, these guys are hatching some sort of a plan. That also kind of implies this implies that they have some sort of a way back. They have a way back. Oh, wow. Neat. Okay, I'm not going to tell you what that stuff is all about. Neat. So this is what I need to get the information about this place. So if you fuck around and find out around inside this area about how horrible it is, information at this location will teach you how to do it. But if you want to get that information from this place, there's a whole bunch of wyverns that you have to navigate to get through so that you can find your way into the data centers to fight a bunch of defense spells that will attempt to kill you, and thus Bob becomes your uncle. Wyvern Roosts, Civic Explorers, Apex Predators, Lab Defenses. Uses the standard array of rune traps and living spells. And so this is just what we have set up for this week. And I don't anticipate you guys getting very. You only have a 3-hour game session. You're going to be throwing around a lot of mana. So I'm expecting you guys are coming in from the northeast here. You're going to fuck around with all this stuff. Next session, you're going to get into this space and start figuring out what's going on with the steam vents, the mephits, and the magmen. You could potentially get your way to the sky, to the Sky Islands. Then session 3 and 4, I anticipate you guys actually messing around on the Sky Islands. If it takes, it could be 3 sessions for you to get onto the Sky Islands, and it could take up to 3 sessions for you to resolve the Sky Islands. But I'm leaving that all up to you guys to figure out how you want. You can take, if you can find a secure place to rest, I don't mind you taking long rests so that you can reset all of the powers that you have available to you. So you can rebuild your kit of powers to be able to work with the environment that you're finding yourself in or the type of threats that you have. You have your sidebar, which is 2 extra spells that you can have prepped that you can swap in during a short rest. So you have a little bit like you can have the utility stuff like adaptive resistance and empowered abilities. Those are really 2 great powers to keep on your sideboard because they allow you to gain advantage on a specific stat, saving throw, and ability checks. And then the adaptive resistance allows you to spend mana to gain resistance to different types of damage sources. So that also becomes super useful. Those are really great things just to have on your sideboard so that if you encounter a threat, you could potentially back off, take a short rest to recalibrate what powers you have prepared, and then tackle the problem with specific mana, with potentially your mana refreshed, rebuilt, and then your character reconfigured to take on whatever the next threat is. And when your mana burns out, then we take a long rest, and you find some place to hole up and take a long rest. Otherwise, you're gonna have to slog your way back to the other. So you're gonna want to secure this. You're gonna want to come in and secure an area that you're coming in from here, so that if you end up burning out all of your resources and you need to take a long rest, you can retreat back to the prior area and get your long rest because the next tile over to the northeast is secure area. So you can leave this tile and go get a long rest. Or you can find some place that you've made some sort of an alliance with creatures in the area that will be able to provide security for you to be able to take a long rest. And you can short rest anywhere. And if you have security put in place, you can do so without being interrupted. If you attempt to do something unsecured, you always have a chance of being disrupted. And you can lose that opportunity. It just becomes another random counter with less resources available to you that just slows you down and potentially threatens you without any resources. So once you secure an area to rest, probably somewhere inside of these 3 areas, you'll be able to secure someplace you can take a long rest for, which will give you the ability to come back and attack probably this section. And then once you get into that area, you'll be able to get up into this area. So 1 to 2, 3 to 4, 5 to 6. That's generally how I see this happening. 6 hours out here. Maybe 6 hours out here into this region. another 6 hours of figuring out what's going on in here, and then another 6 hours in here broken up into a potential 6 sessions. Starting on August 5th is the beginning of the sessions. So we could probably have this resolved by September 2nd or 9th. 2nd or 9th. That's where I anticipate this being done. And then we'll take a break. And then the Player's Handbook will officially be released here at the 16th. So during the 16th and 23rd, we'll be updating the martial power system to be compliant with 2024, because that was always the goal. And then at 7th and 9th, at 7th and 8th level, we'll be able to start in on October 7th at 7th and 8th, go through to November 11th, and then probably by December 2nd, we'll be working on 9th and 10th. And so the playtesting will be resolved by the end of December into the new year. The Eberron adventure will be published by then. Martial Powers moves forward to my primary project that I'll be working on artwork every morning, Monday through Friday from now on, once this project becomes live in December. The Spelljammer stuff we'll continue doing on Thursdays and off days through the next couple months, so we'll be putting out content there. But yeah, that's our game plan. And once the books come out, I might put Spelljammer on hold for a while once the September books comes out and devote. I'll have my Eberron time as my primary project. We'll have our playtest happening here on Mondays and spending time on Tuesdays, Fridays, and sometimes Saturdays to continue building stuff out for this playtest. And then the color mana conversion with all the new spell updates and stuff. We'll be working on that list as well. So got a lot on our plate and a long way to go, but we're gonna get there. We have steps taking for each one of them. So, but that's it. It's past noon, so it is my time to cut off for the day. We got Curse of Strahd coming up this afternoon. I've got some work to do here at home off screen. I will be back again on Monday morning to continue. We should begin the campfire tokens. The tree tokens will be done when we come in on Monday. That's pretty much guaranteed. They're almost done, and then we'll start the campfire stuff. But this has been us building. Like we now have enough meat on the bones in these 10 locations with the 2 general realms, with like 4 different conflicts between sentient creatures that can be communicated with. There's a lot going on inside of this 10-mile space that I can definitely run for more than 6 encounters. So I'll be spending my downtime today getting this stuff set up, and then basically doing an intro with you guys on Monday into this tile to start slinging mana around and fighting monsters and figuring out what's going on. So that's it for now, and I'm going to go ahead and check out. So thanks a lot, anyone that's checking this stuff out. Try using Oracle dice to answer questions for your campaign, or to build a campaign, or build your character, or design a magic item. It's Oracle system is such a useful system of design. I've used it literally for decades, and it keeps the game fresh and exciting for me as a DM, because I can do this obviously as part of prep, but I can also do that when people ask me a random question inside of the game. I can oracle the answer, and I remain surprised and excited about the campaign as much as you guys do, because I'm discovering stuff and answers to questions that I didn't know I needed the answers to until you ask them. So we get to discover these things together, and that's what makes dungeon mastering such a satisfying experience for emergent gameplay. And like these are scenarios that are built, but how you solve them and what alliances you make and who you kill, that's all up to you. I don't care. The goal of the game right now is to simply create a safe zone, to take whatever the fuck is going on inside of this 10-mile area and make it safe enough for you to bring non-combat characters in to take a nap in their cart. That's where we're trying to get to, a place where they can roll in here, make a camp, and not expect to be killed. That's your goal. And once you can do that for this region, you can go to another region and secure that as well. So anyway, that's it. That's it for now, guys. I will be back on Monday, and thank you so much. Cheers.